That sounds still okay, Farouk? Sound
Yeah,
good?
it sounds good. So it's a mic testing. Yeah.
Yeah, test, test, test.
Yeah, that's good. Everything is good, Mark. So go ahead.
Yeah.
You're live. Yeah.
Are we live? Good to go, are we?
Yeah.
Right. Good afternoon, good evening, everybody, wherever you are. Delighted to have you along to our webinar today. Delighted to introduce my global CEO, Mohammed Farouk. He and I are going to be taking you on a digital transformation journey this afternoon. So we're really looking forward to that. If you're listening to this session on Facebook or on LinkedIn Live, just like to ask you to consider flipping over into the Zoom link. Not because we've been paid by Zoom to have more people on there than anywhere else.
Mark, you're breaking a bit. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Let me just deal with my sound. And let me just. Does that sound better now for everybody?
Yeah, I think it's clear. It's much better. Yeah.
Does that sound better, everybody, now? How's that for everybody now? Does that sound better?
Yes, Mark, it sounds better. Yeah.
I'm not hearing anybody at the moment. Sorry.
Mark, we can hear you well.
Yes, I can hear you now. Sorry about that. Okay, so we've got over that little gremlin. So yes, we're going to take you on this digital transformation journey. If you're on Facebook or LinkedIn, please hop on to the Zoom link, because actually in that way you'll be able to better interact with us during the session today. And we'll also be able then to share with you the information pack that we're going to get sent out at the end of this. And also to everybody else who's now listening in, if you put your email into the chat box, what we're going to do is we're not going to delve you with PowerPoint slides and a load of documents during the session today. We're going to treat you to more of a podcast type style session today. We do have a lot of documentation to share with you. So if you put your email into the chat box, then we'll get that information to you in a couple of days following today's session. So if you could do that, that'd be great. And thanks, Keith. I see that you've already got yours in there as well. So you'll get the first prize for the first bit of information out on the other side. So today is all about digital transformation and the digital transformation journey. We're going to deal with some of the foundations to digital transformation and then move you on to probably the stuff that you're all here for, is to learn more about how that digital transformation process really works in practice. And I've got Farouk here with me today. And actually, Farouk, one of the first questions I wanted to ask you was that this digital transformation journey, I know because one of the first things you told me when we first met was the journey that you've been on from where you started as an organization to where you now find yourselves. And I think it'd be quite useful for our audience, first of all, just to hear that little story about the journey that Exeledia took towards digitization.
Thank you very much, Mark. So good afternoon and good evening, and wherever you are. And so I would say it was not an easy journey. So when we started the business in 2010 as a training and consulting company, I did not have a lot of confidence because I was starting this business after failing big time in my first business. So there was a lot of negativity around, like, why are you going again? So here we are talking 11-year story. So we started as a training and consulting company in the beginning. And what happened over a period of time, people started liking us, the way we offer the services, mostly because of the kind of flexibility and understanding the needs of the customers and basically helping them based on that. So they started coming to us and asking us questions where they say that, okay, you're doing training, you're doing consulting, which is really good. Can you explore this framework on a consulting domain, which we were not really familiar with? So we have brought in some of the best consultants in the world. I remember somebody flying in from Australia, just to deliver a 3-day session on a first class ticket where we could not really afford it. So I remember, paying him $40,000 for, and the revenue for the whole project was 50,000. So, but we wanted to have the best people delivering it. So people started, liking the way we used to deliver the projects. And initially, we got, technology projects in the space of analytics. We saw a lot of exciting data with people, so we started using business intelligence tools. And over a period of time, especially in the Middle East markets, where we started the business, we saw that there is not enough maturity in capturing the data itself for most of these organizations. Then we have realized that you really need to help these organizations in terms of digitizing the basic processes and digitizing the business best practices. It was kind of easy for us, even though it was a new domain for us, just because we understood people, the way they worked, and we understood the capability and maturity. And most importantly, we understood the science behind the process using the best practices and frameworks. So it was kind of easy to understand, their needs and expectations, and then build a team around those processes to deliver using the technology experts and business analysts. So I would say over a period of last 11 years, we formed a circle of excellence, which would basically start from establishing the business processes, then improve it, then you digitize it, then you can robotize it, then you can simulate it. I'm just talking about the projects we have done. I'm not giving you some keywords. So when I say simulation, I've seen a lot of exciting AR and VR projects are done for some of the largest organizations. And most importantly, we also do a lot of augmenting stuff using the AI Center of Excellence project. So it's like giving them using the emerging technology bit. So this circle of excellence keep revolving as and when the organization wants to explore new processes, new products and services, or they're starting a new subsidiary, or they're exploring a new market, or a new customer comes and comes and asks us questions. So it was a will of a people, I would say, who stood strong with us. Whenever I sat in the meetings and said yes and came back to office, nobody told that, you're crazy, like we can't do it. So I've got a habit of saying yes to things, and, which really helped us win a lot of very exciting projects. And our people stood strong behind me and the organization, which is why we are forming and improving the circle of excellence, if that makes sense, Mark.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's a great journey to have been on, from training organization to digital technology business, and clearly one driven by customer need rather than necessarily an absolute desire to become a tech entrepreneur. So it's really interesting to hear that. One of the things that we wanted to talk about today were the three kind of keys to digital transformation, which were people, process, and technology. And in the first instance, one of the things I thought about was that idea of transformation. And one of the stories that came to me as soon as we started talking about this project was the fact that I always used to think that, caterpillars that turn into butterflies. I had this concept, a bit like the hungry caterpillar from the children's book, that the caterpillar spent its time getting fat and eating, and then went happily into its cocoon and went through some sort of, I don't know, puberty in terms of a butterfly, and just transformed from a caterpillar into a butterfly in the spring. But then I started to understand the biology of transformation, and it was really quite interesting, because the caterpillar goes into the cocoon all nice and fat, but the purpose of feeding itself up is so that it can actually essentially turn itself into, I don't know, genetic mush inside of the cocoon. And it's only as a result of all the pain and hard work inside of going from mush that it turns into a beautiful butterfly that breaks out of that cocoon and flies off and begins the circle again. And it really started to ring home with me that a lot of the transformation projects that we've seen, a lot of them don't get past the mush stage, and some of them are half mush, half butterfly, and they kind of wonder why those projects don't ultimately fly. And one of the things that we want to do today is kind of have a conversation to try and enable you to avoid some of those pitfalls that create that digital mush and that failure to fly at the first instance. Now, Farouk, you've been really kind to me, because as you know, my background is more about people and coaching and developing people than it is about technology and process. So you've been very kind, and you're going to let me ramble on for a little bit, for about 10 minutes or so, about the people side of all of this. People call it the soft skills. I don't know about you, but my experience of dealing with people is that that's the hardest part of any job. And whilst you might need soft hands, the skills are really quite tough. A bit like an Indian opening batsman, you need soft hands to be able to deal with those difficult deliveries that come down and send the ball where it needs to go. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Very much in the picture. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I thought when we spoke about this was we talk about, I think, two key points, which is first of all the leadership that's required on a transformation, and then the team that you need to take with you. And that first key thing that every leader needs to give its organization, whether it's on a transformation process or it's just business as usual, is the ability to set out both purpose and direction. So there's real clarity of why is the business doing what it's doing, and also the direction that it needs to go in to achieve that purpose. And have you seen that in the projects that you've worked on that have been successful, that there's been clear leadership?
I think we have seen a mix of that in most of the projects, but wherever we could inspire and influence the projects, the first thing we generally go and ask these customers is, even before winning the project, why are you doing this? What's the motive behind doing such a project, right? What is the positive impacts you're expecting out of this? Are you going to have more retention? Are you going to stop spending more money? Are you going to save more time? Are you going to improve the cycle time? Now, this is kind of very difficult sometimes to digest, especially with the leadership team, when we ask this question, because when we go and ask, they always have a feeling that we have identified the right solution. And some of the biggest pitfalls which I have seen the big leaders or the organization makes is that they decide a tool and then they start to fit in their business inside that tool, right? So it's important that you understand your business goals. That's the first thing, right? Consider your culture, consider the kind of people you have got with, consider the competency, consider the maturity of your business. Also consider the the competence of the people, and most importantly, can we afford it as well? So I always have a wish list, but can I afford to pay for it over a period of time? So, and what I would say is that any leader who wish to go for this, they're very clear about the purpose in general, but we try to help them understand the vision better and see as far as they could, and help them with more clarity in terms of where the market is moving, where your products and services are rated at this point of time. And most importantly, we say that, okay, you've got, this is the kind of culture and people you've got, and what's your current processes? Is it really fit enough to go to the next level? Do you have to do a process optimization before you go and do a digitization process? It's like going and talking to, probably, a techie and say that, okay, I want you to develop this form. He simply develops that form without asking you, why are you doing this? So asking why is very, very important for every level. So right from leadership to the floor level and the project team, as well as to the person who's writing every line of it. So communicating this, it would be the most important element of this exercise.
Yeah. So it's very clear that sense of purpose and direction is very much one of the key tenets of any leader, the ability to create that environment. So whether you listen to someone like Simon Sinek, who talks about first find your why and start with why, and then build out what you do and how you do it from there. Or you look at people like Jim Collins, who were talking about setting the purpose and setting the direction, and then being very consistent about the move towards it and why you're doing it. Whichever kind of side of the leadership or management sort of guru side of things you come from, there's always that sense of purpose and direction. And I also think that when we come on to look at the people piece, that if you haven't set that purpose and direction, what you have behind you is a whole group of people who are really enthusiastically not entirely sure what they're supposed to be doing. Yeah. They work very hard, but not necessarily all pulling in that consistent direction. And without purpose and direction, it's very difficult to set clear milestones and boundaries and opportunities for your colleagues to follow follow behind you and move forward. And I think that sense of purpose and direction is, if it's missing in the organization generally, it's certainly going to be missing in a transformation project. And I guess it's one of those things that it's a bit like building a house. Unless you've got that real strong foundation of a clear sense of purpose for the business, there's not really a lot of possible point going on a transformation journey, because you're not entirely sure what you're going to turn into. You're just doing it because the world's told you that you need to change rather than having a reason to do it. And I think one of those couple of other key things that the leader's job is in this process is being very clear about where we are today, and then setting the sort of milestones of the journey. And then during the course of this process, whether this is a process of leadership or a process of transformation, being able to be very clear with the team and the rest of the organization and the customers and all the stakeholders where on the journey you are, and actually how successful you've been as you move along that journey. Because that then creates the sense of security in the people in the organization and the customer to be able to trust you and the organization to be able to produce the beautiful transformation that we're going to talk about a bit later on. So I think those points you've made about purpose and direction and giving security and current location are hugely important. Now, one of the key things that we've already talked about is the people that we're taking on the journey with us. And one of the key points, I'm just sharing the screen now because I said we wouldn't share too much documentation with you, but I just thought we would share this screen, which is taken from the Kubler-Ross grief curve. I hope you can you see that, Farouk? Is that appearing?
Yes, I can.
That's very clear. That's good. Okay. And as you may know, that when we suffer grief or loss, we go through a fairly psychological and fixed curve in terms of our response to it. The bottom axis of time is often very different depending on the person, but the reality is that most of these stages are evident in most people who've been through a process of grief. And interestingly, the research that's been done tends to show that any organization going through a process of change suffers the same kind of psychological response that you would do if you'd lost something. And I guess it's not surprising, because change is a process of loss, because you lose the old certainty and moving towards an unknown destination, and in which you've got to trust that you're going to get there. And there are kind of three big stages that you've got to take your people through. The ending of the old, which is essentially the death of the old. And you'll find amongst everybody who goes through this a sense of shock that the organization is going to change, a sense of denial and shock because, okay, if it changes, what about me? What happens to me? What about our role? What about me as the customer? A kind of sense of general, oh, well, they're going to do it anyway, and I'll just have to accept it. And then the really tough bit for any organization, this transition, this is what I would call, we've gone into the cocoon and we're about to go into the big period of change. And what you've got to get through is this sense of depression that will come across the organization. And as a leader, if you're ready for that, then you can get your message and your communication, all of the work you need to do done ready for this point. Because what you've got to do is you've got to move your organization and get great motivation in there to get people to start to play with the new ideas that you've come up with. And it's at this point that you really need your champions and your innovators, those people who are going to really say, yeah, this change is exactly what we need. I'm really on board with it. I'll get my team on board with it. And you know what? I'll get my team to add to the change. I'll give you more ideas. I'll help you take this forward more quickly to enable the organization to get engaged. And I think this, for any leader making any change, whether it's digital or otherwise, is a great little template to have to prepare the journey before we start. One of the things I was going to ask you about, Farouk, was that in terms of your experience of these kind of transformative events, what have you seen in terms of leadership that's created the greatest amount of innovation? What steps have you seen at that depression into motive? Where's the motivation come from? What have you seen people do?
I would say, again, different leaders, different perspective, different ways of communication, and different ways of making people, getting engaged or making people engaged. I completely agree with the transition journey which you have showed right now, because you may bring in the best of the best tools in the world. You may have the best of the best process in the world. But if people are not ready to take it, if they are not buying in that, if you don't have the buy-in from if you don't do that internal selling, it's never going to make it. If I have to give you an example, we have done a very big, a project on quality, which was on a Lean Six Sigma project with one of the government organizations. And we never took the word change. We simply made sure that we're not mentioning the word change. We never spoke about Lean and Six Sigma. We said that, okay, we've got a lot of wastages, to eliminate. So I still remember the example we gave. What happens when you go fat? When you put on a lot of weight. They said that, okay, we go to gym, we do exercise, or we do dieting. Let's forget dieting for the time being. Let's do some exercise and trim and eliminate the wastages. Can we do that? So this was a kind of exercises we have done, and people got in, and this was the idea came in from the leader. How wonderful, and at the end of the project, we went and told them that, we have implemented one of the most difficult tool or two difficult tools, which is Lean and Six Sigma, for the past 18 months. And congratulations. They said, did we? Right. So this is, so this is a real time. This is a real story, right?
Yeah.
So, and just to answer your question, especially the smart leaders, they communicate the goals and they inspire the people through, by communicating the goals in a simple manner, consistent efforts. And what they do is that, they identify problems and growth opportunities which would possibly affect, reaching that goal, right? Or which would possibly fast track the growth. So if they're identifying the growth, they don't come up and say one new thing all of a sudden. It's all connected to the objectives. It's all connected to the goals, right? So they say that, okay, we've discussed about $1 million business revenue. Now let's look at a growth opportunity, which is digitizing our process, which is optimizing our process, which is going into a new business model, which is creating a new digital asset of our own and going into the global market, right? So the most important thing is that, I've seen process innovations in different ways. So a very simple process innovation is basically, we are talking about, changing the way we are doing things. It's like, I've been doing it this way, which is taking me probably 10 hours to complete this process. And, so I can do it in 4 hours if I adopt another way, right? So I'm just tweaking that method. So that's generally called as incremental innovation. And then enabling technology or as a tool to fast track this process so that, the communication happens faster. So technology is just the means of reaching the faster. It is not the tool which would do a lot of magic. So if you don't put together your people and process well, it's not going to happen. And most importantly, if you have to create, a disruptive innovation where you say that, okay, I'm going to replace an existing method of doing things. Probably the best example would be electric cars, so that's a new way of living, the new way of driving, right? So
Yeah.
that's something completely different. And another thing I've seen is that smarter CEOs and directors, they have started thinking about creating their own digital assets. So,
Yeah.
rather than buying the big software platforms and paying them all the money they have, they started building their own digital asset, test it for a while, maybe for, say, maybe for a year, and then say that, okay, this is good to go. We have got another 1,000 companies across the world. So they just do an opportunity analysis, and they say that, okay, this is the size of opportunity. Why don't we go through appointing partners and sell it globally, right? So
Yeah.
this is high time you all have to think about building digital assets rather than just buying the tools and templates which has been offered by, with all the due respect to the big names across the world, because they all come in, take your knowledge, build the processes, and ask questions, and they build it, or they tweak it, and and they charge you. You don't own it.
Yeah.
The intellectual property doesn't belong to you. So the smarter directors are the ones who build tools of their own, test it for a while, and and scale it. That's how the leaders are kind of transitioning. I'm not telling this from reading somewhere. I'm telling this from our own experiences working across different continents. So when you go to Africa, when you go to Middle East, and when you come to UK and Europe, the culture, right? So it's kind of learning on the go. I generally call it as get, hit, and learn. So so that's exactly what we were doing. So I think we're quite used to it now. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's interesting because one of the key things about getting the team on board with that change process is a sense of ownership of the change, and then a real sense of trust in the leader, which tends to come from the leader trusting the individual first. It's kind of be trusted to get trust. And I do remember a story that you told me. I think it'd be really interesting to share with everybody today. Was the story of one of your customers in the Middle East who built his business essentially off the back of innovation that was generated entirely internally from his own people, because he trusted them to come up with these ideas, some of which were big and some of which were small. Do you just want to just tell us a little bit about that, because I think it's really interesting to share?
Can you repeat it, Mark? Because I did not hear the question clearly.
Okay, is my voice coming through clearly enough now?
It's clear now. It was breaking in between. Yeah.
Okay, it was just the client of yours that you'd worked with in the Middle East who'd built a significant proportion of his business off the back of innovation generated from his own people.
Yeah.
You remember telling me that story. I think it'd be really interesting just to share a little bit about that, as much as you can, anyway.
Yeah, I think one of the most exciting stories I would push in terms of digital transformation is basically I would say that the most exciting experience I had is I used to deliver, or I still deliver, a lot of training sessions, and what happens is like you deliver one training, you go into the next one, and you slowly start working on the consulting projects over a period of time. You get to see them deeper. You get to have a stronger relationship with this organization. So you've identified some of the major gaps, which is basically one of the biggest missing links of the entire business. So what happened was that one day I've requested the VP of the vice president of internal audit, but I said that, okay, I need to have a quick chat with you. He said, I can give you 10 minutes. That's all I can give you, right? So I said, okay, that's really exciting. Let me come and explain what I have found out. So what happened was that, I went in and I've explained the gap, and using a dashboard, and where the entire analytics was shown. And the first question he asked that, where did you get my data? Who gave you my data? I said,
yeah.
He being a typical auditor, internal audit director, I said, it is a sample data. It's not your data, right? So he said, okay, this is exciting. can you do this for me? Right? So I said, yes, if you have time, we can do it. So instead of having a 10-minute conversation, we ended up having a 4.5 hours meeting. So which he was driving. He had all these calls, and he says, I work with the big fours, I work with the big names. Can you do it? Can you confirm this? I said, yes, let's do it. Let's do a prototype first, understand where it goes. And what happened was that, so even after having a lot of ERPs and other technology platforms across the organization, they still were doing 49% of the time were actually spending in terms of doing the manual work, right?
Yeah.
So we have identified those, and all we did was that we just eliminated that by digitizing it first, right? So it was all a very simple task, like it was all very simple task, like prepare a document, get it signed, scan it, send it. And if there is a change, again, edit it, sign it, send it. So it was actually taking a 49% of their actual operational time. And I don't know, how did it happen? So it's basically started from a basic training project, moved into consulting, established the processes, optimized it, and then we slowly started digitizing it. Then we could give them the story behind the data using the analytics projects. And over a period of time, that turned into, a bit of using the basics of artificial intelligence as well. So look at the basic element till the big growth. And I would say, the kind of savings they made by eliminating this 49%, this is $15 million every year just by doing it, because the size were huge.
Yeah.
And when I showed the business case for the first time, they did not believe it. They said, no, this much savings, not possible. We are not losing this much time. It's all about how you showcase it. It's all about how you position it, rather than going with one sales deck and say that, okay, I've got the best tool in the world. This is the best for you. And I'll have the same dialogue when I go to the next meeting as well. So in the first meeting, I was talking to a food manufacturing, and the next meeting I'm talking to a retailer. How could it be the same? So I think it's all about what you do and how you do. And the most important thing is that, especially when it comes to the leadership, how keen are you to adopt these better practices? How smart are you to sell this to your internal team? I've seen a lot of very big technology platforms built, took 5 years of implementation, and they generally utilize only 5 to 7% of the entire platform, or sometimes zero.
Yeah.
So there's royal celebrations across the organization, and the marketing team celebrates it. Communication teams goes for a big picture, a big party. So everything is done. But end of the day, if you do, Mark, an impact assessment, what's a positive impact for you after implementing the whole process or after implementing the whole technology? Can you do a positive impact analysis and see, do you have more customers coming in? Did you retain more customers, right? So, you really have to do this exercise. So in order to do that, you have to make this as part of your project plan. So there are so many exciting stories like this, but I don't know, we don't have time to explore the whole thing. But, I think these are exciting bits I have seen. And when I say it's not just me, it's all a lot of exciting people. And I always say that, when it comes to business, I'm the dumbest person in the room, and the rest of the guys are the most amazing people you should talk to. I think it should be the scenario for everyone in the business.
Yeah, that's cool. So, I mean, I think that first part of the journey we've covered, which is the leadership journey and taking your people to water. I think that one of the things I've learned about you is that you know more about standards and ISO standards and business models and business structures and international structures than anybody I've ever met in my whole life. And I think you told me the other day you met someone who knows even more than you. So between the two of you, you must be an encyclopedia. So you've seen those countless models. Is it possible to have a digital transformation without great processes? Can you just buy the software and you'll be fine?
it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen because it's a very simple process of understanding what you need and why you need them, right? Do I need it because Mark has it? You're my competition. Do I need it because I want to be the first company who's going to be having it? These are some of the reasons which is not going to get you the right results. But if you don't have a business blueprint of what exactly do you need, and most importantly, this would probably answer some of your future questions as well. So I would say that if you can talk to people on the floor, understand what they're doing and how they're doing, capture the wish list, right? And most importantly, validate what they have said with the top management or the middle level managers, rather than capturing the processes from the top management and the middle level management. They're not the ones who's doing it. Go to people who's actually doing it. Even though you build a digitization or a digital platform, go to people who would do all the hard work, which is people on the shop floor, right? So you go there, talk to them, but make sure that that's been validated, right? Once you have that picture, you've got the raw content of what needs to be built. And the next thing what you have to do is that you apply all the mechanics, knowledge, and intelligence to optimize that process. Don't get into technology, right? And this could be the use of your business excellence tools. This could be the use of your ISO management systems. This could be the use of your regulatory platforms, which it could be anything, which is your mandatory requirements, which is your wish list, or which could be anything which would help you to achieve your objectives. So basically, all I'm trying to tell you here is that if you don't have a right process of achieving your end goal, and if you don't put it in black and white and communicate that basics to everybody within the organization, it's never going to happen. And most importantly, you need to make sure that everybody else is participating in the journey. It is not something which has to be done in a strategy room. It is not done something which has to be written by the directors. If you do that, the directors are just going to view the dashboards, right? The guys who's going to be doing it, capture the needs, ask them, and also consider what are they capable of. Would they like to have the data inputted in such a way that they can make it faster? Look at the culture and maturity, and take it further from there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, one of the things we're going to look at later is digital maturity and that journey towards digital maturity and how you spot it. But I guess that a lot of people here today, and certainly me personally, have got experience of those organizations that are essentially run on a series of spreadsheets around the organization that don't talk to each other and can be changed when the need arises, when certain things become a little embarrassing, certain numbers get changed and information gets deleted. Have you ever seen a business go from that disconnected environment through to a really high quality digital transformation where everything talks to each other? Have you seen that happen during your long career putting these things together?
I think this is the most common thing which you see when you talk about digital transformation. Many big names may not talk about it because we always have to talk about very big things, very big achievements. But I think even though you talk about the biggest organization in the world, the most matured organization in the world, they all have a side business, which is the shop with a lot of Excel sheets, right? The spreadsheet. So it's basically, so if you go to a typical finance department, even though you've got capability to do your budgets on your ERP, their budgeting is mostly on a spreadsheet, right? So because it's kind of easy to play with, it's kind of very flexible to change data. And most of the results, even though you have business intelligence dashboards, still you don't collaborate. You still have the PowerPoint presentation. The first question you ask is that somebody showing you a beautiful tool. The first question you ask is that, can I export that to Excel? right? The second
Yeah.
question they ask is that, can I export that to PowerPoint, so that my presentations makes it easier, right? So I've seen that huge transition, and the best way we generally show that is to actually capture the existing information from those spreadsheets and existing information from those ERPs and CRMs into a centralized dashboard, and then show them the basic intelligence or the story behind the data. Now, what happens is that, so when you go and talk to them about their business intelligence, the other day I was talking to you with someone, we did a basic exercise from Excel sheet to a dashboarding tool. What happened was that, I asked him, Paul, what, what's your conversion ratio? What's your conversion rate? So he said, because I'm talking to my key customers, so my conversion is, from all the opportunities, it's 70%. When we did the analysis, it was 32%, right? And when we further drilled deep into it, what happened was that, I asked Paul, who's handling your, top 5 customers? He said, I make sure that, I personally handle them, right? I said, you have to change it, give it to somebody else. It's not happening because your top 5 customers are changing every year. There is no consistency, and you're losing a lot of business. And if you look at the revenue, there's a lot of problem. He said, no, I don't agree with it. But I said, it's not me, it's your data. Where did you get it from? I said, that's your spreadsheet, right? Then we've agreed to transition into a beautiful process flow, a very simple project. It's kind of easy, right? Similarly, there are tons of projects, and most of the time you don't require a 1-year effort to show the results. There is always this low-hanging fruits, which we typically call in the project. So you can always do those simple tweaks, call the data into the dashboarding tool, bring the story behind the data, show them the early result, see what's not performing, and that would be an excellent exercise for you to identify the gaps itself. Sometimes when we talk to the senior directors, what happens is that, they say that, okay, I have this wish list. But what happens is that, whenever I go and ask my IT team, they say that, okay, I need 2 weeks or I need 2 months to prepare this, but I don't get the answer to my question. So most important thing is that, if you have got data and spreadsheets, it's high time that, you add a workflow to it. It could be a basic digitization process, and own that asset. Don't pay someone else, right? So yeah, so, and that becomes a digital asset. So plenty and tons of projects, Mark, but different stories and different time zones and different expectations. And we won, we failed, like that's how we have learned. Yeah.
Yeah, we got Maddie, who's one of the, put a comment in the chat, who says that you do need those different methods across different countries and different zones to get those things moving forward. So that's a really good comment. Just on the comments, if you've got any questions for us at the end of this, it'll be about 10-15 minutes at the end. Pop them in the Q&A, and we will do our best to cover as many questions as possible once we've been through the formal part of the session. So back to where we were. So one of the things I'm interested in is, in terms of your career, what are some of the great process innovations you've actually seen, sort of like from where they were to where they got to? You told us about Paul, which was an interesting example, but I suspect in some of the larger businesses and organizations and governments that you've worked in, you've seen some big things happen. So it'd be lovely to hear maybe a story around that, about what you've come across.
I think one of the simplest stories I've always seen is that, one of the biggest manufacturers of alloys. I don't know if I pronounce it right. Alloys to the likes of BMW and Mercedes. They produce this for them, and they have. I think this is a huge innovation for them. They have got something called a suggestion scheme from 1979. I am born in 1979. So from that time, they've been doing it. And all we have done is that, that's been an amazing process, which has been tested and proven for the last 20 years or last 30 years. So what happened was that, we have digitized that whole process, right? And, what we have added on top of it, we have added rewards and recognitions on top of it. So we could see that, some of the smartest people in the room, apart from those 30 days holidays, they get another 60-day holiday. And the
Wow.
CEO was the most happiest person who would come and say, this guy deserves it because we only need that much time of, him being in the business because he's that smart. And these kind of rewards, he was very open. You cannot have, one model having a HR and the administration who would come and say, this is my HR policy and this is how I want everything to be done. But the most importantly, it completely based on your organizational design itself and how well you want to position it, right? So this is the simplest thing, but we spoke about the participation, we spoke about the engagement, and we spoke about the success. And the most important thing is the results, because we were preparing the presentation for an innovation award submission. And the amount of results, disruptive innovation, incremental innovation, and different ways of adopting new technologies and new processes just through the system was way beyond $1 billion. Right?
Wow.
So
Okay.
it was not done by us. We can't take the credit of this. It was done by that process, which was optimized. All we did was simply automate that process, adding some more bits to it. It's more like adding a bit more fuel to what is the engine, which is already running.
Yeah.
So we just elevated the speed and, by creating a bit more engagement here and there.
Yeah. So that,
So,
I mean, that's
yeah.
an interesting example, isn't it? Of actually the digital transformation is very much the thin veneer of on the top, but actually under of it is all that hard work over 40 years of leading the business towards innovation, creating a process, getting that process working, and then making it even more successful by putting that digitization on top.
I think, Mark, you're exactly right, because it exists within every business. It is just about diagnosing them. It is just about finding them and catching them. So because you all have it, because no business can make money, without having a proper process and structure. But it is just that, they don't realize it, or it is just that they don't document it. So you generally see two types of organizations when you walk into businesses. One is, a rule-based organization. Everything goes by the rule, policies and procedures and work instructions for everything else. And by the dot, it's everything is followed. And the second one is more like the lazy guys, where people like me, people like you, like possibly if I can tell you, where we say that like we are more focused on the outcome and the results, right? So it's not about talking about creating an innovation. It's not about just talking about creating a new technology platform. It's all about discussing what results it gave you over a period of last 10 years in terms of people, process, and the money you made, the new customers you've made, everything else around.
Yeah. It's a really interesting story. Now we move on to I guess the meat and potatoes of why we're here, which is the technological piece.
Yeah.
And obviously, before I became anything involved with technology, when I was a lawyer, it was kind of my idea of a technological advance was a new username and password, and that we got the new system and then we played with it. But I saw some of the research that one of our partners had done in relation to customers in Africa. And that was saying that 85% of businesses think that digital is key to their future development, but only 25% of those businesses rated themselves as digitally mature. What do you think about that? What does that tell you, and what does that tell you people need to do?
I would say before I answer this question, I would like to ask this question to the audience. So if our team can actually post a question here, we're saying that, okay, I want to see how digital are you, as an organization. Let's be very honest, so are you on an early stage? Are you on a developing mode? Are you on a very well matured position or maturing as an organization? So when the questions gets answered, I would say that, Mark, everybody talks about improving the organization. Everybody talks about digitizing the processes, but it's not just about doing them in the books. Okay, you can always do that, create a blueprint, make it, make it available for the people. But the question is that, have you inspired your people to use it, right? So it's not about having the platform in place, it's about that engagement. So when you get your username and password, like what you've explained, how often do you log in? How often do you stay there? Like if you have to look at the interaction and engagement, that's where the success is. So if you have a system which has been made after a lot of hard work, and end of the day, if that's not being utilized, so when we say digitization, you can say that, the digitization is done, but is it being utilized? Do you have the right results using this? And many other countries, if I take the example of Africa, I would say they take system as the religion. I personally see this every time I walk into the businesses. When you talk about a standard, when you talk about a framework, they take it so seriously that, they read every line of it and they try to practice it. Some of the organization who's got the right intent to practice it, they can't afford it. Not just in Africa, everywhere else. Some of the organization who's got the luxury of practicing it, they've got all the budget in the world, but they don't participate in it, right? Yeah. And some of the organization who's got everything in place, they just buy this off-the-shelf things, and they end up evolving their businesses and positioning themselves the way the software wants you to position, not the way you do your actual business. So it's like when you go to different regions, as the participants saying that, okay, every region has a new strategy. Every time you jump into a project, it's more importantly that what exactly are they trying to achieve, and then doing it.
Yeah. So should we get that poll? Oh, we got the poll up. Have we got some results?
Yeah.
I think we've got some results up there that the vast majority of people are developing as an organization. There's an interesting part of you. Most of you seem to be in the mush, to take my butterfly analogy. So I suspect that's probably where most of us are most of the time. So hopefully we can take you from developing into maturing for the rest of this session, Farouk. I think that's fair to say, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's always great to be in a position, at least like if I say even that early stage, it's all about getting started. So I've seen a lot of organizations planning big time for years and never getting started. It's like, Mark, you're waiting for a perfect weather in UK. I don't know when that's going to happen. So yes. So I think you see all the all the weather conditions in one day in the UK, right? So what I'm trying to say is that it's all about not waiting for a perfect moment. It's all about getting started. So I could see that starting done, and I could see a lot of organizations are developing, and maturing means depending on are you on the track of looking at your data strategy? Are you at a level of looking at identifying the possible scenarios of applying artificial intelligence, or are you at a scenario of digitizing your spreadsheets into the workflow in an easier manner? Yeah. Depending on where exactly you want to be. Yeah.
So why is it the businesses struggle so much with their digital maturity? What is it about the digitization that becomes so difficult for organizations?
I think it is not just about the digital maturity. If you really want to understand your digital maturity, I would suggest you one thing which may not be the method for everyone, but I've seen this giving us great results. Again, I'll go back to the typical analytics maturity. So old days, we used to have this MIS reports coming in, and we used to have a specialist for MIS within every organization. So what happened over a period? So we used to look at what happened in the past. We used to look at historic data a lot. So it was more like, a reactive approach. So then we realized that, a lot of things are happening. So we started looking at the real-time data, which is basically what's happening, right? So from what happened, we started looking at what's happening. and looking at what happened and what's happening, you slowly started having the capability of, you know, seeing what is likely to happen, which is basically predicting what, where exactly you are in terms of your typical analytics maturity. And then when you know that, Mark, if you can go to the next slide. Yeah. When you know that, where exactly you are, and in terms of what is likely to happen, you can also look at the likes of Netflix. When you open Netflix, they would say that, okay, watch this movie. How do they know I want to watch this movie, right? So that's based on my profile, my gender, my age group, my location, and what I've watched in the past. So this is mostly like the level 4, which is, I kind of would say, the most matured scenario at this point of time. Now, the question to you is, where exactly are you? You don't need to answer it. You have to answer it yourself, where you say that, okay, are you still at level 1 and 2? Were you being very reactive and a bit of proactive? But are you looking at jumping into a level 3 and level 4? If you can do this assessment, then you go back and see where exactly you are. Then you can think of why am I here? Because I don't have my basic digitization. I want to see this. This is in my wish list, but I can't see it because I don't capture my region within my current data set, right? Yeah. I don't capture my net profit. I just capture the gross profit, or I don't have certain dimensions in my business, or I don't have certain measures of my business, or I don't have some of the data. A lot of data is captured basically. If I give you an example, so when we do a very simple example of getting excited and not getting excited when it comes to the capturing data and analyzing it. When you do your customer feedback analysis, Mark, what happens is that, it's always on 99.99, right? Because we send a survey and everybody ticks the smiley, and you say that, okay, this is amazing. But if I have the guts to go to my finance director and ask him, okay, I've got 100 customers, and out of them, 20 of them are top customers. And I go and say that, okay, my customer feedback is 99.99, all green. Can I know my current retention rate? What's my customer retention? How many customers what's my retention percentage or retention ratio? Sometimes what happens is that, your key customers are leaving, still your customer feedbacks on 99.99, because the reality is the finance knows the actual thing, and the feedback is done by the quality department, which has no connection to the data. Yeah. Now, how do you measure it on your business as usual, which is you're losing your customers, or you're getting less revenue from your existing customers, you're losing that trust? And how do you actually compare this data and make a meaningful decision, right? So if you don't have the visibility, and if the top management is not participating in both of these exercises, right? And one is captured using the, MailChimps, or, like there's so many survey software, and, all I get to see is the beautiful results and a report, but is it connected to my actual business and retention of my customers? I don't know. Does it make sense to you, Mark?
I said there's a really interesting point that you make there, that actually that digitization is only really successful if the organization catches enough information for the systems to be able to then delve into and to give you some of the insights that you need as an organization to enable you to make further changes and improve the business. So again, it comes back to the process part has to come before the digital piece, because the digital piece is, as you say, 5% used because 95% of it's redundant because you have no data to run those processes on. So one thing that interests me, because I know you have a very clear process about what you do when you go into an organization and start to look at digitization. What do you call it? What's the analysis called?
It's a very simple process called white sheet exercise. Yeah. And there's no big methodology to do it. It's about just being with you in the room, having a simple conversation, And what we capture is the basic needs of you as an individual and you as an organization. So that starts from the CEO or the top man in the organization. And at the end of the session, we've got an exciting question on, even I did it this morning, I was talking to somebody who wanted to build a platform for forensic accounting. So, I would say, what's your wish list? They ask, why are you asking this? I said, I just want to understand, or we just want to understand what's your wish list. So this is a wish list exercise. Then, he gets excited when we say that, okay, these are my wish lists. Now it becomes easier for us for two reasons. One is like, it's easy for us to close a project. If we get the wish list from the CEO, we say that, okay, this is your wish list. This is your current stack. And you know what? You are at 30%. You still have to grow 70% because that's a big gap. So it becomes easier for us. The CEO picks the call and say that, okay, this guy is coming, giving whatever he wants, and have more meetings with this guy. So this happens before we sign the deal. It's not that we get a paycheck, then we start with this. So this white sheet exercise, happens not just with the CEO. It happens throughout the organization, back and forth, validated, then optimize the process, rather than we go to them and say that, okay, you're the manufacturing industry. This is a benchmarking study done somewhere else in the US. You're based in the Middle East, or you're based in the UK, and this would fit you. How do you know?
Yeah,
it won't fit you. You can't fit in something which was flying really high in US to a UK customer. It's not going to happen. So the simple method is that, ask them what they want. And many a time when you speak to the middle level layer, you get to ask question, are you a subject matter expert in cement manufacturing? I got to hear this when I went to a cement manufacturing company in Saudi Arabia. I said, I'm not. And then they said, no, we can't talk to you. Bring somebody who's an expert. Yeah. I said, I spoke to your CEO. He wants you to speak to you as a team. So shall I go back to them and shall I go back to him and say that, okay, this is what you want? No, I can speak to you. So it's basically, you don't need to be a subject matter expert of the industry in order to capture the first level, but on an operational process level, you need to have that expertise, so that you understand the terms and terminologies. But over a period of time, when you work across industries, again, I'll go back to, I was thrown out of the room many times when I started this journey, so it's just everybody else will have the same kind of experience. You end up learning the process, right? You get hit and learn again and again. And over a period of time, you kind of understand the jargons and terms and terminologies across industry. So the most important thing is, having this white sheet exercise and letting them know that, having a digital asset is going to be key, rather than paying somebody and, paying them forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. So you see yourself a bit like a tailor who goes to make someone a suit, that you've got to go and measure them up and make sure it's right for them, and they like the color, it fits, it's going to work for the occasion they want to take the suit on, or whatever piece of clothing you're making for them.
Yeah, I think most of the time I get to hear from the experts saying that, okay, this is not a scalable model. And especially the innovation experts who comes in and say that, okay, you can't scale it. You don't have to scale it. You can't serve everybody in the world. These kind of projects, every country, if we have got 10 or 20 very good clients, and every year, if you can serve 5 of them really well over a period of time, that's more than enough for you to live and feed your team, because you can't expect to have everything with you, right? So it's important that okay, you really need to scale it as and when required. But do you really have to think of scaling beyond your bandwidth? I think that's kind of great. So I don't know, I may be wrong, but that's how we look into it. So it's more of collaboration, rather than competing. Again, I would say that, when we do our business, I don't remember doing a competition analysis. It's basically the biggest competition for you is yourself, because the way you do it is completely different than others. So it's not about the way we do it. It's most importantly how we communicate and how we position it, and which is more flexible. And we have the capability and understanding of saying no where we don't know, and we have got the guts to say that, which I think also makes a lot of a lot of contributions to every project. And false expectations gets killed on the day one, like if you go and say no to things which you can't do.
Yeah. So we're not bad. We're an hour and 4 minutes into a presentation about digitization, and yet we haven't yet used the word or the letters AI. So we may as well use them now, because clearly that's the magic bullet, that you just need an AI infused anything. I think an AI infused car will get you there quicker. So is AI the magic bullet that people make it out to be, or what's your take and your view on it?
I would say AI is not the magic bullet. It is not. It is just about having AI won't give you the perfect results, or like every big business leaders thinks, most of other business leaders thinks, creating a statistical model or creating algorithms is very fast. It is not. It is a data hungry bit, and it requires plenty of data to be done. So we help our customers of creating that transition from digitization to the augmenting process. It is the way is what are the possible scenarios for them to implement and utilize AI, again considering their objectives in terms of attaining new customers, in terms of attaining new markets, global markets, and new business models. So it's all about identifying the possible scenarios, then prototyping one or two of them, and testing it internally, and making sure that this is this can be scalable, right? But again, we make it very clear to every business we work with, there's no silver bullet having an AI. It's going to give you results and business immediately. If AI is the right tool, it would give you the results. If the basic data capturing of creating few workflow and digitization, so if you don't have the right mechanism of capturing data, you still spend a lot of time and energy in massaging the data. If you want to call it, technical term, curating the data, I would say massaging the data, because you've got so much of written information from your visitor log, you've got so much of spreadsheets, you've got so much of data from your business universe in the form of CRMs, ERPs, isolated systems, financial management software, procurement, documentation, everything else. But can you pull data from all these sources and make some meaningful decisions? It all depends on what maturity do you have. But AI can do the magic once you create that the model, and that is being tested, and you let the system learn, right? So there are different methods of teaching the system, but for that you need to have a very solid patience as an organization. So it's not that overnight you're going to have an AI and get it over the line. So we help organizations from two angles. One is identifying the possible use cases and exploring it to scale it after prototyping it. The second bit is that we also help them to improve the knowledge of the workforce, which is the AI Academy, which is basically they can improve the workforce. And for common man or for common businesses, we also help them even to capture the most basic digital idea into a successful business. So if you have got a basic idea, no access to money, no access to funds, and simply you can share the idea using some of our platforms, and we would put a solid business case around it, prototype it, and help you to launch as a business. So these are the two ways of helping digitization and bringing AI into picture, Mark, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I mean, so the AI process again sounds a little bit like you've got to build the foundations at a very good level and understand all of the sources of data through the business before you can actually then start to apply some of the technology. Because I suspect a lot of people are buying technology to then retrofit their data to, and then it has to be massaged to fit the tool. It's a bit like a sausage machine. That's the sense I get of it. Is that because a lot of money's being spent on AI based or AI infused or AI related systems and use cases and technology and I'm not entirely sure that businesses are seeing the full value of that investment right now.
I think the most important thing is to take an inventory of your existing technology portfolio, and take an inventory of the kind of people you have, take an inventory of what kind of goals have you set, and then see that, okay, rather than just running a gap assessment against any of the standards or best practices, do a real gap check against what you want to achieve and what you have in terms of, I would say 5 key areas, in terms of your people, in terms of your process, in terms of your technology, in terms of your capital, in terms of your assets, all connected to your organizational goals. Then you see that, okay, where exactly do you stand? Then you would say that, okay, how far you have to travel. This is exactly where I am. And in order to reach there, you would probably have to take a fast track. You will probably have to, close those, or I would say immediate bleeding, and make sure that, you earn that. I think every phase of the project, there has to be something to celebrate rather than expecting the entire result at the end of the journey. It's always important to have that small wins in between, celebrate them royally, get people engaged and reward people. And, that makes an exciting project, which end of the day, Mark, it's all about people. It's not about anything else. Yeah.
So it's kind of where we came in at the start of this, that you've got to start with the people, the process, and the technology is the bit that goes on the end of it. One of the things I was going to ask you is, because we've all made mistakes in our business careers and other parts of our lives, what's the biggest mistake you've ever seen a business make at this level, at this point of a process?
I would say not just one business. We have made mistakes as a business. We have taken a lot of bad decisions. We have taken a lot of bad decisions. Every business makes mistakes, but the biggest mistakes I have seen in common with the leadership makes is, expecting that, the likes of AI or likes of technology, which is going to do magics. That's number one. And the second mistake I have seen is that, people have expectations, especially the leadership team and the middle level management have got expectation based on their assumptions. They never communicate. So you've got, everything cannot be made into a document, because sometimes when you do this white sheet exercise, you can have a scope, you can have the deliverables, but, there would be those thin lines in between them. And then finally, at the end of the project, they would say that, I was not expecting you to do this. Right? So what were you expecting? Spell it out so that we can know what are they. So if things are deviating, shout it loud, and make sure that, you communicate it. You've got the short reviews in between. So don't make it as a PowerPoint show, escalate it as and when required, communicate it effectively. So the most important thing I have seen the leaders making the biggest mistake is, managing those expectations and, expecting wonders out of the project, and assuming that, everything we have decided without consulting the lower level of the organization and middle level of the organization, and not considering the need of the organization, executing and buying off the shelf products just because they've got 100 case studies, they've got 200 deployments, right?
Yeah.
Is it really for you? And sometimes it's very difficult to digest, because I want to buy a Ferrari, and, I would make all the reasons in the world. When I wanted to buy a Mercedes for the first time, I did not have the money, but I went back to my wife and I said that, okay, you know what? I want to buy a Mercedes because, that's a serious need for the business. It was not. I just wanted to buy it, so I made a reason. So I made it up. And then I started, connecting my stories. Because I have this car, I'm getting more business. It was never the story, Mark.
Yeah.
Nobody, I think hardly 2% of my customers would have seen that. So it is all about getting that point and keeping the expectations as simple as possible and shouting it aloud and having a steady growth, rather than expecting every result at the end of the project, and not doing projects for the sake of completing it and having having a sign on your marketing space where you say that, okay, I've got ABC software in place, which is the best in the world. So we are the most matured organization. Are you really utilizing it? What have you earned? What have you learned? I don't really know. I'm not blaming, but this has been the kind of mistakes I've seen in my journey or our journey in general. Yeah.
Okay, so we've been on a whistle stop tour of this people, process, and technology piece. We've talked a lot about getting the purpose of the transformation there. We've talked a lot about getting the people and the leadership in the right place. Been very clear that there's no point going on with this journey unless your processes are in a good state and in a good way, and that actually the icing on the cake is being able to turn those processes into a digital process to achieve more effectiveness and more efficiency. And I'm reminded of your customer who had that $1 billion growth in his business as a consequence of a great process, which was just enhanced by the addition of the technology. And I'm also one of the really interesting things is the point you made about Mercedes at the end, is that ability to rationalize why we want the thing. Yeah, we want it because the other businesses got it, but we'll make up all the reasons why our business should have it, and that will then backfill the justification. And then no wonder the project then collapses after 5 years, because no one really knows why we wanted it in the first place. So we've got a bit of time that we've built in for some Q&A at this point.
Before we go to Q&A, Mark, just one final piece of learning which I had is, it's a very simple thing. It's not necessary that we have to do the project for any company. As long as you understand what are the steps involved in a process, anybody can build a technology platform. Any software provider can build a technology platform. All you have to be careful of is, are you aware of the fact that why are you doing this? Can you communicate that message to the person who is not just capturing the requirement, also to the person who's actually developing the project? Not just the analyst would understand easily, but when he goes and further translates it, you still miss the whole thing. So what you have to make sure is that, whenever you do a technology project, make sure that, the actual person who's writing the code understands why are we doing it. And most importantly, you validate it back and forth on your short review. Don't wait for a monthly review. Initial stages of the project, make sure that you've got a weekly review. However the big is a project, it's important to have the shorter reviews, at least for the first few days or weeks and months of the project, so that you build that confidence, get them understand the culture, and give them enough so that they learn your culture. Teach them your culture. Don't think that, okay, they are your consultants, they're supposed to understand everything. Sell what you want to build to the team you're building it, even though you're paying for it. That's exactly what I would say.
Okay.
It's a selling process the other way around.
Yeah. So just a little bit of time for some Q&A. So the first question I got from Tony, which is quite interesting, which is which areas of the business are most ripe for digitization, do you think?
That's a tricky question. So I would put the question back to you, saying that, okay, the first question is that you need to set up a context. What is your business, and what are the top priority items for your business to achieve? So I would say the first and foremost, you need to build the basic blocks of the business. You need to make sure that you've got a place to onboard your people. You need to make sure that you've got all your processes captured in your business, and you need to make sure that they both are connected to each other. I think before going into a business excellence or the biggest piece of the business, always try to build the basics, which is your people, process, and assets in general. So once you build that, then you can look at start building more into that. So which could be your operations, which could be your sales and marketing. But end of the day, Tony, there's no real priority, and the best way to identify them would be probably an exciting white sheet exercise. So if I can answer this question, so then I am actually contradicting with everything I said so far. But I say that, okay, every business is unique. There's no way where I can say that, okay, these are the best processes to go with. I would say the basics needs to be in place, and the rest can be depending on what is most important for you as a business based on your goals. Yeah. If I may answer, that's
okay. That's great. Well, Farouk, I think we're coming towards the end of our time with everybody today.
Yeah.
It's been a great session. It's been fantastic to talk to you. And what we're going to be able to do, I think, at the end of the session is those people who've let us have their email address and anybody else can get in touch with us. I think you probably saw popped up on the screen a little slide there giving you some details of where to contact us for the slides. But if you leave your email address, we can get the information to you. And more than happy as ever to have a conversation with you about anything that's been raised in today's session. So before we go, any last remarks, Farouk, before we let everybody go off into particularly in the UK, into the wind and rain?
Yeah, because just to answer a previous question or Tony's previous question, we have seen organization creating a business universe, by let's say I like X software, so I buy it. I'm from finance. I like another software, so I buy that. So it's like, whatever is your likes and dislikes, you started buying that small pieces into your business. And so your business as usual is managed by your ERP. And then on top of it, your customers are managed your CRM. And then you've got the small operational software. You buy one for risk management, another one for strategy, another one for business continuity. And then you'll have a strong software for GRC, governance, risk, and compliance, and one for internal audit, right? So the question to all of you is, do you really need to buy all of them separately? Or can you look into something where you can really explore one tool which would manage your support systems in the space of your governance, risk, compliance, internal audit, and strategy, all in one place? And then have few operational software which can be integrated. So it's not just about having multiple tools and having them as in silos, and which has got no connection. Again and again, I'm telling you. So when you define your dashboards, make sure that you can capture information from all these sources.
Yeah, cool, great stuff. Well, I think we've come to the end of our time today. It's been, as I say, a delight to talk to you. And obviously we look forward to talking to those of you who've joined us today further, and we'll be happily sending out information to you as soon as possible. So without further ado, I think that's good afternoon, and thank you very much indeed.
So thank you very much. So good seeing all of you. Thank you very much for being a part of it. Thank you very much, Mark and the team.
My pleasure.